Hello, this is Vanessa Maffey, and I will be giving you your PowerPoint presentation on responding to a major operational challenge briefing. We are moving our headquarters from the West Coast to the East Coast, and this is how we are going to process that together as a team. So first, I'd like to make the introduction that the purpose of this is to empower you to make this transition as smoothly and seamlessly as possible, to include you in the process and make it known that we care, we understand, and are and will be listening to your needs. This won't encompass everything, but it's a start, and we have an agenda. Our agenda is to address primary concerns, provide you with resources. Some of that resources is some knowledge that will help empower you. Moving forward, we'll discuss personalities, and then we'll kind of summarize everything. The main topics are stressors, stress reduction, providing resources and what those resources will be, goals, talking about keeping and making goals, compensation, equity, trust, what it is, how we obtain it, ethics, and we'll talk a lot about culture and different personality types which intertwine. So Henry Ford himself didn't say he was especially highly intelligent, but what he did was create a whole panel of about 100 people with all different kinds of knowledges and backgrounds, and derive from then, and they all had to work together. So as a team, teamwork, coming together is the beginning, which is where we are. Keeping together is progress, which we hope to progress together, and working together is success. So we'd like you to meet our West Coast team. Since we would be on Zoom, I would go, and I'd be sharing my screen, but I would go back to have introduced the president, the chief executive officer, chief operation officer, and vice president of marketing, and whoever else was on the team, so people could get familiar with the faces and have them all say hi. So we would take a moment to do that. We'd introduce the East Coast team, go through everybody that was on there, again, flipping back from the shared screen to the Zoom, so whoever was talking would pop up and people could start to get familiar with each other. If we were doing this, of course, not near each other, so, or getting familiarized. Hopefully at some point, everybody would fly to the East Coast and to the West Coast and see each facility or business or office and meet each other, if of course the company budgeted for that, but that's what I would want to happen. So now we know that this will create a lot of challenges, and those challenges will cause stressors for every employee. The work complexity, compounding with overload, there'll be more work as well as more complex work. With regard to leading and guiding, as well as your specific role, so your work responsibility will be more probably actual workload. So you'll be combining your actual work with leadership and communication on top of daily duties already expected. And we also would like to acknowledge that that doesn't also include your family life and how you'll have ongoing stressors in your personal life as well as your work life, and the added work life stressors of this change will also impact your personal life. But for purposes of this meeting and this presentation, we're just talking about work, but we just want to make note that we acknowledge that there is both, and they both impact each other. So we don't want to ignore that piece of things. So we listed some examples of coping strategies. Some of you will do some of these, and some will do all at certain times. So we'll just kind of briefly go over that. So there's behavioral methods of problem focused, which is you'll try to work harder. You might reach out and seek assistance, and trying to acquire additional resources. The bottom two, of course, we want you to do that. Working harder doesn't necessarily always mean it'll produce less stress, but on the emotion focused, you'll engage in alternate activities, which we'll talk about, resources providing for that. Seeking support, we'll provide resources for that, and venting anger. Of course, we'll provide resources for that, and hopefully it won't come out either with other employees or working with your families, but just know that we're aware of that, and for you to be aware of it. So maybe making a card or something about these. So during this whole change of process and whatever, you can kind of have a something to look for on how you are coping. Cognitive might be your strategizing. You might self-motivate yourself and change priorities. On the emotion side, avoiding, distancing, and ignoring. Looking for the positive in the negative, and reappraising. Of course, the only one on here that I'd like to point out is the avoiding, distancing, and ignoring. Usually just compounds the stress and is something that we would like to avoid avoiding. So working harder and avoiding, distancing, and ignoring are probably two of the least positive coping strategies on here. The other ones can be seen quite positive. Reassessing, where you're at and remaking those goals. Of course, looking for the positive and the negative, and we'll ongoingly talk about these and be assessing them. So resources that we're going to provide for you as those coping strategies, you can see where some of them fall under here. One is we're going to provide a company counselor free of charge during this whole process. And they will be available to you throughout the day, set up Zoom meetings or meet in person, but we'll definitely have somebody available to you at all times to ongoingly speak to, or just when there's a critical moment. We are going to provide paid gym memberships in your area, because that can be focusing on something else, getting out all your stress and frustrations. We believe is important. Healthy body, healthy mind. We'll provide extra paid training, so above your job duties and what you have to do, if you need some more expertise or collaboration with each other, maybe you don't understand somebody else's job that's clear across the East Coast to the West Coast and it's hard to communicate, we will pay you for any extra time over and above your regular duties. We're going to break up into team leads. That way you have a go-to person to tell them what's working, what's not working, have a chain of command, if you will. So there'll be a designated person, and then it will be their job to make sure that you are utilizing all these resources. And then, of course, we're going to pay for some intermittent paid personal days during this transition. There'll be some, extra time above and beyond what you already have. And at the end, we will coordinate having some sabbaticals, because we know this will be a long, 6 month to a year progression. And at the end of that, we will give you some extra paid time off to kind of reset and regroup. We're talking about intrinsic and extrinsic outcomes. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we've kind of showed, some fringe benefits. Of course, during this process, there'll be some, promotions and extra pay. But this is really a time for you to shine and get those skills under your belt that can, our company will give you, which is extrinsic, And then have you focus on the intrinsic outcomes, just the accomplishing your own mission, feeling good about yourself and what you've accomplished, goals that you set and you achieve, and that through this process you will have a great resume. Not that we want you to leave, but it will add to your skill set, that you made a huge company merger and relocation happen. So we'll just always be focusing on both of those. We'll definitely be putting tangible markers in place for goal setting. So we'll have you have daily goals, weekly goals, and monthly goals. We'll have a system in place, a software program that you can use. We'll pay for that and have you be able to set it, and have your team leads help follow up on that, and just make sure you're on track so you can break it down into obtainable things, and then having a bigger picture. So goals can be tangible, like you meet a deadline, you see financial things change, something processes fully implemented, software program or whatnot. And then there's intangible goals. So those will be more personal to you. You'll know goals with regard to leadership, being able to communicate successfully through a challenging situation, and then your sense of accomplishment, not just outwardly, but maybe where you feel that you've accomplished a lot, even if there's not the tangible so far, like awards or payments or bonuses or things like that. But so we'll ongoingly check in with you about all of your goals and help support you in those, and make sure that you're aware of the tangible and the intangible is really important. So we'd like to talk about equity. Sometimes people don't see what people put in, but they see the outcomes, so they feel like things maybe aren't fair. But the goals that we have in the program will better help us implement equity, but it'll be able to show equity, so there is no question about it. So, when somebody puts in the effort, performance, their skills and abilities, they have the experience, the training, they go above and beyond to get more training, they've been here longer, they have education, then there's for every input, there's an output, which means, more pay, there's more benefits, more fringe benefits, more workplace perks. So all of you will be, we know, inputting a lot of this, and there'll be outcome, but we do want to make sure that there's trackable, tangible inputs, so that everybody's kind of getting the same outcomes for their inputs. And just by letting you know that we are aware of this. So how we get there, how we're going to get through this transition and merging and all of that is we're going to have a high degree of trust. Basically just trust disposition based, which means we're all human, and just kind of a trust in that we all want the best for ourselves as well as for everybody else. And by helping ourselves, we're helping others and vice versa. So there may be, you need to pull on just a degree of trusting that we're all human and we all want the best for everybody. Intrinsically, cognition based means, we're just gonna have to see, like we're telling you all of these and making these promises and saying we're gonna do this and do that, and only time will tell that, you're gonna trust us, that as time goes on, and as you work with the other people on the other coast, you'll be able to tell that, they're committed to you, committed to your success and the success of the company. But you're gonna have to know it in your head, but time will tell on that. And then, our goal hopefully is effect-based, where we all go through this huge challenge and problems together, and it creates, we'll be vulnerable to each other, and we'll find a common ground, and that we'll all kind of come through this and have a high degree of trust that, built on our time working through something difficult together, and see the successes and celebrate those. We'll get there by having great ethics, making sure that we have moral awareness, we have moral judgment and moral intent. We'll continue to talk about those throughout the whole process. But if everybody is thinking, acting, and being morally ethic, that will also create the trust. And then recognizing that we have cultural values. East Coast, West Coast, we all know them. We'll get into that a little bit more. Everybody has different ways of being conscientious, agreeable, extroverted or introverted, neuroticism, openness to experience. And whether you're East Coast or West Coast, all human beings have different levels of these, degrees of these. And so we're just going to always try to be getting to know each other and knowing where we kind of lie on here. Nobody's right or wrong about them. It's just humanity and how we are. So being aware of all of these will really help us be able to get there. So now I would have everybody take a moment and write down some of the cultural values that you think you have and the other people have. So I would probably give like 2 minutes to the people to kind of write them down. And then because we would be on a Zoom call through this, I would have people speak up and say, okay, what does, East Coast say about West Coast, and kind of do that. And then I'd probably go in and edit this and write it down as we go. And could be kind of a, eye opener. And then I would say, well, what does the internet have to say? So here are some of the ideas that are out there that, the West Coast, as far as equality, seems disrespectful. The task focus seems unkind. Honesty seems rude. Independence seems stingy. Efficiency seems neglectful. Guilt-based seems shameless. So West Coast is kind of a negative connotations. And then go through all of the East Coast ones and kind of show them what's out there. May or may not ask them if they agree, but just show them that, there's definitely a difference of opinion. Some may say that they do see things that way. But we would kind of go through that. We would again go through the East Coast and West Coast. Kind of more funny, like East Coast is sarcastic, fast paced, casual wear, have a lot of seasonal weather. And then West Coast is, friendly, active lifestyle, they're chill. I think people are thinking New York and California. But overall, they love food, they're good people, and they hate traffic. So kind of go that there's negative, but there's also positive, and they're kind of overlapping. And that would be kind of just go through that exercise. And then, of course, we would talk about Hofstede's dimensions of cultural values. So some people will follow along these. East Coast, West Coast may be different, but really it's up to the individual. But being aware culturally, we want to kind of fall in between these two. So power distance, acceptance of a hierarchical order in which everybody has a place, which needs no further justification. Low, people strive to equalize the distribution of power and demand justification for inequalities of power. Individualism versus collectivism, a preference for loosely knit social frameworks, so we're kind of loose on that. Collectivism, tightly knit framework together. masculinity versus feminine, masculine preference in society, or, the feminine, and kind of just would have everybody talk about the difference of these a little bit and put some input in. Uncertainty avoidance, do we like to know exactly what's going on, or do we like to kind of leave it up to what's, kind of organically grow? Do we think about long term or versus short term? Is it all about now? There's those personalities that are drivers, and then the ones that like to kind of let things roll out slowly. And we would just talk about these a little bit and get to know each other and where we think some of us lie. Probably guide that and do it on the Zoom so people can see the faces with the people who associate, some of those, not that they'll necessarily remember, but still getting to know each other. Because with teamwork, kind of knowing where people are coming from, not making somebody wrong or right if they're more, more individualistic versus working as a team. That just means somebody has to grow more in that area, but they will always bring something to the table that is positive. They'll have more strength in, maybe being more nurturing in the feminist area versus, the masculine area, but they still like to do things by themselves more and need more guidance to be able to work as a team. But everybody will bring their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and that just means we have to grow for them. So again, kind of keep it light. Here's East Coast versus West Coast. Here's kind of how we think. West Coast is kind of more California with the skateboarder, they wear tennis shoes, kind of hipster, and then East Coast is more serious. I think we think of, New York with the suits and darker colors, and then of course here's like Chicago, and then West Coast we think of palm trees, although that is not always the case, unfortunately. And then here's just a different, work schedule. Oh, West Coast comes in late at 11:30, but we work late until 10. We love a local microbrew. But, the city people like the dirty martini, extra dry, 3 olives. Let's see. Oh, musical preference, rock, reggae, electronica. But, East Coast, Lady Gaga, techno, and they get to work real early so they can get off earlier. Some of this may fit, some of it may not. Some of you who were born on the East Coast moved to the West Coast and know both of them, or maybe because you were born one way, born and grew up one way, then you prefer the other way. So we'll probably talk about that a little bit, kind of lighten things up. Then we would kind of let people guide their own thing. We do a virtual mixer and would ask all these questions. So what are you most excited about with this venture? Why did you choose to go into your field? Kind of get to know each other. How do you like what you do? Who has most influence in your personal life? So basically a mixer to get to know each other, building teamwork and that foundation. So something we're going to do is take the DISC personality. So, there's 4 basic types. As you can see here, some of the types, the DISC. Ask it if anybody has taken this already and if they already know. Usually have one dominant one and then one secondary. We can exhibit all of these, but, maybe the compliant person needs to learn from the dominant one, but the dominant one needs to learn how to be more compliant and whatever. But I think it's really important for everybody on the team to not put somebody in a box and say this is how they are, but it's really fun and can be very helpful to know, why somebody's in a role and what their personalities are. So you can just kind of say this is just kind of how they are and speak to that. So we will be doing personality profiling. We'll also do the Myers-Briggs. This can also help you in your personal life. So we'll also be taking those and sharing with each other, maybe through another virtual mixer or whatever, to talk about them and kind of go in depth more about that. And probably trying to do some projects where we put, like in the disc, we'll put, a D and IS and a C together, and then we'll put these people together and kind of see what works before we develop like full teams. But it's really important to kind of know a little bit about kind of who somebody is, and why they were they. Like, and it's not no excuse to like, well, I'm a D, I'm dominant, or I'm extroverted. The whole point is to see kind of where, if you're introverted, this, and then you can kind of try to speak up more so your voice is heard and in the team, because we know that you've got things to say and ideas and things to put out there, and we really need you to be able to put your creativity out there. And the extroverts can know, hey, this person is kind of an introvert, and they don't really speak up, so maybe encourage them to speak up and hear what they have to say. So it'll really help us all function as a team, especially not really knowing each other and living on different coasts, to be able to work together. So Margaret Thatcher said, plan your work for today and every day, then work your plan. So plan your work and work your plan. And that's what we're going to do. So this doesn't encompass everything, but it's a start. And these are things we're going to implement so we can build that trust and know that we're aware that there's going to be stresses, that, how to identify, how to cope, and making sure that you're utilizing those coping skills and that we're giving those resources, setting, micro and macro goals, breaking it down, but having the wide picture and the view, the, external, internal, and making sure that you utilize those resources, that you're getting rewarded and compensated, because, hey, money, awards, accolades, all of that's really important, right? And your time is valuable, your effort is valuable, and we can all use more compensation. So, just by identifying the equity mindedness, maintaining a high degree of trust and ethics, but we will, of course, ongoingly talk about that and make sure all of that's being implemented. And of course, learning cultural values and personality types. It can be, on one hand, you can stereotype and write people off as one way, but on the other, we can also make it fun and also grow to really understand each other and know that there's always that dynamic at play. So we'll probably always kind of bring that up and talk about it, and ongoingly bring up everything on here and make sure that we are watching our markers. So we just want to thank you for being on board with us through this transition time. We know that it'll be really difficult. There'll be a lot of stress. So here is my email and here is my phone number so that you can reach out even after this, and give some, we're gonna have a survey and give you some feedback, give us some feedback, some thoughts and ideas, and also some concerns, and we will be getting you the information for the counselor, so you can just begin addressing any concerns and stresses that you're already having, so we can get ahead of that. We don't want things to compound and kind of spiral out of control and blow you out, before we even get started. So I know that some of you have got to have some concerns and stresses, and we just want to make sure that we're aware of those now, you're aware of them, and there's a place for that to go. And then I would probably have everybody have some closing remarks, some things to share, ask that everybody sign off with, kind of saying goodbye so we can see our faces again, and saying their names and their job positions and titles, and yeah, probably just have everybody kind of have their face pop up again, say who they are, which team they're on, before we got off of here. And that would be just about it.